Tattoos. Yeah, I got a couple. They're just not as shocking as they once were, when mothers would clutch their pearls at the thought of their sons having one, and employment relied on concealment. So that's why, when our little action figures sported some ink, we just thought they were more badass. I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen Experience, some awesome action figures who bucked the norms and boldly displayed a tat or two. During a time when tattoos weren't always looked at positively, good guys and the bad guys were needled. And no, it wasn't all G.I. Joe. Let's explore some of the original skin art on tattooed toys and discover the meaning behind them, if any. And stay tuned to the end for an update on how well this ink has aged on those characters who not only survived, but thrived long after the Gen Experience. Tattoos. Not cutie marks, the colorful branding on pony patooties, but real tattoos, like the one found on Dr. Steel, Big Jim's arch enemy. It always gave a toy a little something extra. Who remembers Big Jim? I do, and I loved his camper vehicle playset. But when not relaxing in the woods, Jim was fighting Dr. Steel and his macho dragon tattoo. Debuting in 1972, Dr. Steel was used to expand the Big Jim line, along with Big Jack. That reminds me when I used to go by Big Vic at work, until it was recommended that I didn't. Well, I love dragons. Dr. Steel was from an era of fantasy, sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, so only a massive medieval type flying lizard would do. And Dr. Steel had some pretty boss line art. However, I would have had that baby colored in. Now there is a touch of red, but a closer look reveals this tattoo may have been channeling the horned dragon Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty fame. So maybe purple would have been better. Representing little more than how awesome he was, Dr. Steel was the only character to display skin art. And of course, he was a bad guy. That was the trope at the time. Tattoos were only for that sort. Good boys didn't get them. In an unexpected turn, Dr. Steel would switch sides and become part of the heroic pack. Well, at least in the United States. In 1974, an Asian pirate with a name derived from Peter Pan, but who shared the unfortunate limb, was released by Matchbox. I always loved when Matchbox veered away from the cars with action figures. I know I had some of the Fighting Furies because I remember that you could bend their arm to make their biceps flex. Talk about masculine. To up the masculinity factor, this villain in the small assortment, including Captain Pegleg and the ghost of Captain Kidd, Captain Hook had a solid purplish tattoo on his chest, resembling what looks like to be a big bird. Not Big Bird, and not just any big bird, but what looks suspiciously like the Great Seal of the United States. If you were going to put a tattoo on another bad guy, I think the ink would have leveled up the already incredible Ghost action figure mold in the line. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, flipped the script and normalized tattoos by having them not only on the baddies, but our heroes, the Joes. Of course, it couldn't be G.I. Joe without some ink. These were military personnel, and a tat gave them credibility. The original 1960s and 70s G.I. Joe figure didn't even go as far as to feature tattoos, which had been such a staple of military life. Probably a holdover of the cultural values of the time, trying not to influence young boys. But Real American Hero didn't shy away from it, beginning in 1983 with Gung Ho, the Joe's Marine. And can you believe it? This original 3 3/4 inch action figure came emblazoned with an authentic tattoo. Like the original Transformers being based on real-life cars, it was good to see that G.I. Joe characters, and by default their action figures, having realistic tattoos with real-life representation. In this case, Gung Ho proudly showed off the official United States Marine Corps emblem, the EGA, or Eagle Globe Anchor. The toy was depicted with the tattoo completely filled in, while the animation depicted it as simple line art, where the bottom of the anchor would occasionally shift positions from shot to shot. Ah, the tedious difficulties of animation and their rushed production schedule. The tat was unmistakable and demonstrated the pride that he took in that branch of the military. Giving a little Marine marketing, this body art also gave the toy line validity, making it even more popular. Gung Ho was a solid member of the Joes, but an offshoot of Cobra, the terrorist organization enemy, were the Dreadnoks. Led by the southern skin color changing Zartan, one of his main henchmen was Buzzer, so named for his penchant to attack with a chainsaw. He and the rest of the gang had a very strong spiritual connection to Mad Max in appearance, and the fact that they were Australian. Riding a motorcycle, Buzzer completes his look with a unique tattoo that was clearly visible on his action figure, yet glaringly missing from his card art. Not to mention, unlike Gung Ho, the cartoon Buzzer is also void of any actual ink. It's the tatted toy that's made more menacing, with what seems to be a dagger surrounded by some kind of serpent. Maybe, I don't know, could it maybe possibly be a cobra? It's hard to tell. My oldest brother had a pretty big cobra tattoo on his arm. I remember it well even at 5 years old and was completely obsessed with it. Although my tats aren't as scary, perhaps that is why I was so eager to get them. Well, any trace of Buzzer's original tattoo having official meaning seems to be lost in the symbolism of the two images. The serpent for mistrust and betrayal, and the dagger could mean the courage to face and overcome challenges. Now wait to the end to see the current incarnation of this character and more, and how their tattoos have progressed over time. Back to the good guys, we've got a fan favorite, and I know you've been waiting for him. The suave and chill Hector Delgado, or Shipwreck. He arrived in the second original miniseries in the cartoon in 1984, complete with a winged serpent, or maybe an eel, surrounding an anchor on his left forearm. When his action figure arrived and hit shelves in 1985, something got lost in translation. Sharing the same animated version of the tattoo, here it appeared on his right forearm instead of the left, and the card art shows a solitary anchor, one that was much larger and never appeared in the show. Now, countless versions of an anchor tattoo exist from hundreds of years of mariners and seafarers. The solid anchor version could symbolize the Love Boat for all I know, or in homage to Popeye. Shipwreck's got the arms for it, am I right? Volleying from good to bad, we are back in Dreadnought territory with Zartan's brother, his mid-80s punk brother, Xandar. In typical subtlety only found in 1986, Xandar and his sister Zorana sport some bright blues overshadowed with hot pink. Hot pink, I said. Way to stand out in a crowd. However, it's only Xandar who chooses to adorn his chest with 3 hot pink lightning bolts, apparently to go along with his stylish scarf. Curiously, the animated series attempted for color balancing and made the bolts blue. But then again, color inconsistency ran rampant in these classic 80s cartoons. I might be assuming, but unlike Gem, I think these are tattoos and not just makeup, as that would seem to be a wasted effort every day in battle. But then again, comparing with his face markings, could it all just be threatening war paint to instill fear? Because it sure isn't camouflage. You all tell me what you think. Well, whichever it is, the lightning bolts mean a little more than rad 80s aesthetic we were all looking for in our action figures at the time. Released in the final year of my official initial playtime, 1987, Steamroller came packaged only with the command center and was a heroic Joe. The ink on his left shoulder lends itself to a stereotypical tattoo trope for decades, a bright red heart being pierced by a dagger. Traditionally, when the dagger pierces something like the heart, it can symbolize betrayal, a trauma or a wrong that cannot be put right. Therefore, it's tattooed forever on the skin. Not a very interesting tattoo, but Steamroller wasn't the only character to have that exact tattoo. Well, exact but louder, bolder, and more 80s was a character from another popular 80s franchise, Kenner's Mask, where illusion was the ultimate weapon, but not subtlety. Venom, the vicious evil network of mayhem, employed Bruno Shepard. Debuting a year before Steamroller in 1986, the mohawk-coiffed brute didn't wear his heart on his sleeve, but right in the middle of his chest. This often overused manly body art represented rough and tumble tough guys filled with machismo. And Bruno, along with his ugly face, had that in spades. Choosing a pop of color, a common trait in Mask, Bruno's ink adds some purple to match the geometric design on his tank top. As a bad guy, he knows he's got to one-up on the Joes and elevates the badassery, so he goes the extra mile with a chain tattoo running up his left arm. Goes perfect with that sneer, doesn't it? I wonder if any of you out there have tattoos like any of these. Any favorites so far? Oh, and we aren't done yet. And remember, I'll show you how the newest incarnation of these characters has elevated their body art game. Also in 1986, and in similar 80s Dayglow, the action figure Mad Dog debuted in the Rambo Force of Freedom toy line, with accompanying cartoon for marketing. Rambo fights the evil organization Savage, and once again, tattoos are the calling card for evil. Bad Guy Mad Dog doesn't brandish just any tattoo, but the emblem of Savage, the skull in a triangle hit by a lightning bolt. Talk about tough, am I right? And there were others. These were only some top choices. In 1983, a Masters of the Universe knockoff appeared in the form of Pirates of the Galaxies. Get it? Galaxy? See? You get it. They are highly forgettable, even if one of the generic pirates with a physique stolen right from He-Man shows off not one, but two manly masterpieces. One is the standard skull and crossbones on his right shoulder, and the other is only what I can guess is a scorpion. But these are totally overshadowed by the uninspired name of the character himself. Tattoo. Yep, that's it. Tattoo. Talk about on point. And it wouldn't stop there. Long before tattoos would gain acceptance, toy lines would continue to pop up a tat here and there on various action figures from other toy lines. In 1988, there were Headhunter and Nitro, both based on the uber-violent action movie RoboCop, and found at your local Toys R Us. Classic 80s. And they kept coming. By 1991, another pirate figure based on Spielberg's Hook film starring Robin Williams became available. The Buccaneer Bill Jukes also inked the typical and lackluster skull and crossbones on his arm. These figures aren't done terribly well, just terrible, so I shouldn't expect much from the tattoo art. And another sad ass also ran RDF, or Rapid Deployment Force, from 1992. Taking a look, they were going the extra mile by giving each of these figures a unique tattoo of their own. Too bad they are forgotten. But not everything from this era can have the same popularity. So let's just give these ones to the millennials, huh? And what about today, you ask? Well, many of those billion-dollar brands still exist. As such, it is important to upgrade some of those favorite characters as they continue to evolve in the action figure world. With that, many of these memorable tattoos have been updated in ways that supersize their badassmanship to new levels. One of my favorite lines, G.I. Joe, is the only modern version I collect that show off some bang-up tattoos. Let's get a closer look at the pantheon of G.I. Joe Classifieds collection. Perhaps Hasbro can't use the Marine Corps symbol anymore. Maybe they pissed him off, or maybe the Marines just charged too much money. Either way, Gung Ho's modern tattoo is kind of a mess. Wings outstretched, head down, I assume. Brass knuckles, or a decorative hilt, or a grenade, top it off, I think. Fairly realistic and stark, this solid design, although original, does give off some hints of Reichsadler. Shipwreck is once again all over the place, but for good reason. Elevating his original, it looks like that eel got an upgrade to Kraken? No, maybe more like Quetzalcoatl. What do you suppose is wrapped around the anchor? His left depicts a threatening shark, paying homage to the 25th anniversary action figure. That specific toy could be purchased with either a shark tattoo or the sole anchor design found on the OG card back. Although that shark tattoo resembled either a Pacific Northwest native interpretation of the animal or straight up Jabberjaw. Some say the shark insignia is close to that of Naval Coastal Warfare Group 1, which is stationed in San Diego, California, Shipwreck's hometown. Nevertheless, the most recent shark incarnation is just awesome. As for Buzzer, not only did his serpent more clearly represent a cobra, fitting for who he often worked for, but now he wasn't alone. Classified decided his mates in terror get the same treatment they were robbed of in their original incarnation. Torch has tattooed flames coming up from both wrists, and Ripper is filled with frightening, almost demonic imagery to bring more fear to those he terrorizes. And although Xandar has not been released quite yet, his pre-sale images look to include that can't-be-missed hot pink face paint. As for his lightning bolts, I'll have to wait and see what lies under his top. Like some sort of gender reveal party, and see if those bolts are pink or blue. So why were there no girls on this list? I suppose the transition to tattoo acceptance wasn't quite complete in the girls' toys at the time, although perhaps I will give a little honorable mention to Rainbow Bright. I know, sure, it could simply be a cheap jewelry applique from your local Claire's boutique, but I like to think that Rainbow is just daring enough to sport a small cutie mark tattoo on her cheek in the form of a bright red star. Her own Ziggy Stardust moment, right? Who knows? Tattoos are not just for bad guys anymore. They give a sense of toughness to any male or female hero and say a lot about a person or a character. Sadly, new toy lines and original action figures are a thing of the past for the most part. Recognizable IPs is business as usual today. So aside from some superheroes and wrestler figures, of course, have we seen our last tattooed toys? Did I skip any you remember? During the Gen experience, of course. Oh, I didn't promise this would be all of them, but I wanted to highlight a number of action figures that got inked before it was the norm, when a tattoo was taboo, while now it's almost expected. Look at classic G.I. Joe Rock and Roll. His original incarnation had no hint of a tattoo. But Craig McConnell, former surfer, is covered in California crazy. And it's beautiful. Please share action figures you remember having ink. Tattooed toys from the generation that gave us everything worth remembering, the Gen experience. Please check out more great shows, and I know you want to press that like and subscribe so I can keep entertaining myself and hopefully you too. Thanks for watching, and until next time.